Howdy, folks. This is Chris White, and you're listening to Basic Business Advice. Today, it's myself, Tyler again. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, Tyler. Haven't had a lot of chance to talk to each other, actually, for the past...
It's been a bit.
Conference. Since the conference, I think we really... Man, it's been a bit.
I didn't feel like it was that long.
So glad to have Tyler back. As a reminder, Tyler is out doing Needing Media,
Yep.
and he is awesome, not only producing podcasts, but he does all our videos. There's a bunch of YouTube content up right now that he and his team did from the conference.
Yep.
So if you ever need Tyler for anything, go find him. Today, though, we've got Kevin Bille. Kevin just finished doing our monthly mastermind here at the Right Spaces, and today we're going to kind of wander around on a couple topics with him. But first and foremost, Kevin, welcome. And
good to be here.
May 3rd, your third business conference is coming up.
Yep.
You do a half-day event. You've got some real powerhouse speakers coming in, and I want you to talk us through that here in just a minute. But this is your third Good Stuff event, and that stemmed from your podcast that you've been doing now for 4 years.
Roughly, yeah.
Yeah, called Good Stuff.
Yeah.
Where you lean into sports metaphors, you lean into coaching ideologies, and you translate that into not just the sports environment, but the business environment. And you really found a voice there where you're speaking that. So much so that most recently here, you're with Berlin Gardens, one of our local businesses. You're doing leadership coaching and development for their team. So this has been an interesting journey for you, from podcasting to integration into a very successful company and leading your own conference and still podcasting once in a while.
Yeah.
And so let's start with this. The Good Stuff podcast. Tell us about that real quick.
Yeah, so the Good Stuff podcast, it was in the fall of 2018, probably the first time I was not going to be in a gym for about 30 plus years. Coming off neck surgery, didn't really know where life was going. I was at a point and touched base with Brad Stevens up at the Celtics, and I left. I went up to Boston for 3 days, and I hopped around. I went to the Celtics twice. Their practices, Harvard, Boston U. Me and a buddy, former player, we just went everywhere. For me, in that environment, I can take away so many things and not just basketball related. Came back, I was a GM at a local company, kind of fire hose of information. But my whole thing when I came back was, how could I add value to people? You know, when I'm sitting up at the Celtics gym and seeing the banners and I probably took some of those trips and people for granted. And so how could I come back and add value? So started the job, and then next thing you know, COVID hit. And so I was around a couple of very talented people who, as we were talking before this, know how to put all this together. I know nothing other than just to get on here and talk.
Yeah.
And so we did it. We had no idea what we were doing, but we just started. You know, I think that's more than half the battle. The first week we had a guest every day for like 5 straight days. I'm like, well, we can't keep this up. Then we did like 3 and then 3 and then kind of got it down. So we just threw everything on YouTube. We didn't do anything really podcast wise. And it's crazy. The guests just kept coming. Because as I mentioned to you before, like, who's going to say no over COVID when you contact them, right? You would not be a good person or no. But it started going. And then I had conversations with Jim Tressel about coming to Holmes County before COVID to kind of stop that. We didn't know what that looked like. And it was really a blessing in disguise. And so you fast forward a couple of years, and we decided to, originally it was going to be in town here, kind of double booked, and then we headed out to House Star Theater when I had met Mike, and that's also been a blessing in disguise. It's a great spot out there. It helps some of the people from Stark County get there maybe a little bit easier as well. But it's a half-day event. They're all people that have been on the podcast, or maybe will be. I think one time we had somebody there that had not been on it yet, but. And it's a short event. I mean, I bring in everybody in the night before. It's probably the most fun I have is I get to take them all out to eat. The bill, maybe not so much. It's great conversation. It's great connection. And then, that morning, doors open at 7:30 on Friday, May 3rd. You can mingle upstairs and connect with others in the community, a light breakfast, and then we start about 8:15, and then we're usually out of there about 12:15, 12:30. And so I think it's been a really good thing. I just hope people in the area appreciate the caliber of people, you know, not just maybe what they've accomplished that have come into Holmes County and want to pour into them. And then ultimately it's just funny because some of them then return. You know, we were just talking about Kevin Eastman just came back a couple weeks ago to speak at Berlin Gardens. So once they get here, they love it, and it's a really good experience for both parties.
And I think our team has been there, you know, every year. At least somebody from our team has been able to go, and so they always come back saying how great it is and being a part of that. And I should mention, you've spoken at our conference. I think it was 2021 maybe, that we were still at the Heritage Center. And I think you were speaking. That was after our year break of doing the virtual conference, and that was one of the best reviewed speeches we had that day. So if you guys, anybody listening, hasn't had a chance to listen into what Kevin does with his speaking, you need to go on, find it. Are your full length talks also on YouTube?
I don't think all of them are. Right now we have about, it may look a little chaotic. I think there's about 80 episodes on YouTube. There's only about 30, I think, live right now, podcast form. So not to get sidetracked, my dad about a year ago passed here in a couple weeks. So that was just one thing that I just had to slow down because, just prioritize some things and find 5, 10, 20 hours a week for my mom whenever needed, right? And so, we'll pick back some of that stuff. We have all the content. I think that's the beauty of a podcast, right? It's evergreen. I literally listened to a podcast the other day from 2017. It's kind of crazy. Some of it wasn't relatable, but man, I'm sitting there jotting down notes and I had a full page by the time I was done. So, it seems like everybody's doing one, but at the end of the day, some just resonate more with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been on with us before. You've talked with us before, and I know it's been a couple years since we've done that, but it's always great. And so today you dived into the topic of listening and how to listen well. And I'd like to share a little bit of that content with our listeners on this part. That way, we're not going to go back over what you did. If they want to see that, that'll be on YouTube, and they can go check out your talk that they just gave on that. But give us the high-level view of what you just got done talking about with our group here.
Well, I think first and foremost, just like I led that talk, it's a topic that I'm really poor at. So it was easier for me to talk about. I could give you all the things of what not to do. But no, I just think a lot of probably what I do, I can trace back to when I was younger in that phase of my life, where maybe some mistakes I made or some things I wish I would have done better. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the podcast, my life, everything, I think it's based on resiliency. That's everything to me. My boys probably don't like hearing it because it's almost a consistent thing in our household. But when it comes to what I do now and what I've always done is I'm a coach at heart. And I think a coach, regardless of whether it's what you're doing in terms of leading, whether I was in sport, business, at home, whatever it is, I just think listening is one of those traits that if we excel at, we can be very successful in those relationships. Because ultimately, as we talked about in there earlier today, I think connection is everything, and so are you connecting on a level that's better than anybody else? Because I think when you connect, you show that you care. And I think it comes down to that. I think people just need to be in an environment where they know that they're valued and cared about. And I will just talk a little bit too about what we put up on the board. I mean, every leader wants, we got to have trust and we got to have buy-in. You hear it all the time. Buy-in. I used to say it all the time. When I get buy-in, kids will run through a wall for me. Well, the buy-in or lack thereof was coming from me not connecting or caring about other things other than basketball. I was so tunnel vision to that. And so I think in order to have that, you have to take a step back and have care. I think if I do a good job all the time of caring about you, then I have the ability to maybe get to trust. It's not guaranteed, but ultimately if I can get to trust, and I can win you over there and we have that within ourselves, then to me, if I can ever get to that stage of love where I love this guy, he loves me, and we love what we're doing together, then I think you have a much better chance at excelling at whatever you're doing.
So you brought up some really good stuff in this morning's talk, and I want to say I was listening, but I was also thinking in advance about this. How are we going to talk about what you're talking about here? And you took the very direct path that listening is an active event. Listening is something you have to do, and it's not passive, and it doesn't just happen. You have to listen, and you put a lot of burden, as you should, on the listener. But I want to ask you about a very specific kind of situation. What about when you have somebody who just likes the sound of their own voice? Or, to put it even a different way, somebody who thinks the more that they say, the more they're going to convince you. Because there is a responsibility to be a good communicator as well. And, you know, as leaders, we want to listen. We want to be quiet. We want to say, hey, I'm here to support, to embrace, to immerse myself in what you're saying and all the things that you talked about this morning and being empathetic and listening. But what about when you got a really, really bad communicator?
Yeah. Well, I think to me, it's all about the culture that you've created in that environment. So I might be giving advice to somebody that it doesn't fit their culture or environment. You know, and as I told you earlier, I'm a very transparent, to the point person. That can be good sometimes, and that can be bad other times. You know, I think about when I was an athletic director, there was always one coach that came in that he would stay to my office as long as I let him. You know, and some days he needed that, you know, and I needed to understand that no matter what I was doing or what I had going on, I needed to stop that, you know, so that, you know, he could feel heard. Mm-hmm. On the flip side, I was guilty of him coming in sometimes and and I'm typing or I'm on my phone or whatever it might be. Whereas I think it's just maybe that person might lack awareness. You know, maybe nobody's ever told them that that's the situation. Mm-hmm. You know, for me, it would just be like, you know, hey, Chris, you know, I love when you come to the office. And I actually, to sidetrack real quick, you ever heard of this might be a Craig Rochelle podcast from a while ago. Don't ever have a meeting in your office because then you can't leave. Have it in the other person's office, right? But at the end of the day, I think it's just having a conversation with that person to try to bring some awareness to them. Because I think we're really good at thinking how we are perceived. We have a good idea of that. Just like right now, my message that I'm translating to you guys, but you may have a totally different perception of that, you know? And so if there is you know, if there's not connection there's some type of disagreement or misunderstanding, I think it's just having the ability to communicate that to one another. But I don't know if that's accepted in some of the environments or cultures that, you know, are listening. I'm not sure how that would be.
So you're engaged right now with the Berlin Gardens team, and I don't want to pull any of their laundry out, but you've got to be involved in helping people communicate.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing. Like in a lot of the one-on-ones that I do with their leaders, at the end of the day, though, I will say this, Chris, like I'm a firm believer, you know, this cup's almost empty. If I leave here, you know, and I have a 5-minute drive to a 10:30 thing where I'm leading 20 people for an hour, if I don't fill this up on the way there, it doesn't have to be full, but if I don't fill this up a little bit, so I got to get in the car and get a quick phone call to somebody that encourages me. I got to listen to some music, all these things that I know fill me up. Mm-hmm. You know, so I think you have to start there before any of that stuff. There's got to be that awareness about each individual. And you've got to know what the things are that make the best version of you. If I'm I think people sometimes have this wrong. They think, well, it's selfish if I take care of myself. Well, if I take care of myself and I'm the best version of Kevin, then I'm pretty good at home. I'm pretty good at work. You know, it's like plane goes down, masks come down. What do they tell you to do? Put the mask on somebody else? No, put the mask on yourself, right, so you can take care of other people. And so I think we start there. Like, how are you right now? And you go through seasons and phases of your life, but I think trying to get people to understand what makes the best version of them so you can be the best version of yourself for others. You know, I just know, like, I'll give a great example of this instead of maybe one of them. When I'm tired at night, I'm a terrible listener. You know, we all know hangry or whatever it might be, right? But there's just certain things that we have to know about ourselves that I have to be, man, when I'm tired at night and, you know, maybe my wife wants to talk, I really, really need to lock in. It's harder for me, but I have that awareness and understanding. Now, unfortunately, sometimes I have that awareness and understanding because she's told me, you know, and maybe it's something that I don't need to hear, but or want to hear, but need to hear. And so I think it's also having people in your life too to help with some of those things. So I know it's a roundabout way, but I hope that I think it starts there in terms of them being able to communicate well. You know, what is it about them that they're doing, and then what is their style? You know, as you can already. I'm more of a talker than a listener. You know, so scaling back on that and understanding more so what other people need rather than I want.
It is one of those things. In a profession where I work, lawyers are not known for listening. You know, a lot of our job is communication, mm-hmm. And I wonder sometimes when we're talking about listening, if there isn't an equal weighted hand that you have to be an excellent communicator. Mm-hmm. Whether you're the leader, whether you're a support, you know, I talk about it as leading up. When you're a support person and you're leading up, there's the idea of you've got to make it on purpose to be an excellent communicator.
Yeah, I think when you go to that, I think of two things right away. I think when I was a coach, they told us to make our point in 5 or 6 seconds or less. That was really, really difficult to do. Wow. And then the next thing I think about is, we have 3 boys at home. They're 16, 14, and 8. When I parent poorly is when I'm parenting them all the same. So in my terms, my communication style cannot be the same with all of them. I understand that each of them need a message delivered in a different way. Then, of course, there's the one dad tone that they all need sometimes, but that affects 2 of them and not the third,
sure.
Even when I say that. So I think it's just really understanding your audience. And so when we're talking about this whole leadership scale, a lot of this can boil back to, I think a lot of people are missing the boat and not just connecting one-on-one on a consistent basis. There's nothing more that bothered me when I was a high school athletic director. Oh, you come in and let's do your end of the year review. I shouldn't have to do an end of the year review. I should have been engaging with you throughout the course of the year to know what those things are. And then at the end of the day, every time I'm bringing you in or we're connecting on a certain level, are we only talking about work? Because if you're doing that, I don't know how much another human being, really embraces that environment, because you don't really care about them on another level. That's a big mistake I made when I was younger as a coach. Once again, basketball. I remember one day just getting on a kid and doing some film breakdown in the office, and he leaves, and I say to my assistant, what's his problem? I mean, I stayed up last night to do that film breakdown, and he's like, did you know he broke up with his girlfriend yesterday? And I was like, no. What's his problem? So, it's just like he didn't need to hear at that point about basketball. He has some things going on in his life that he was dealing with. And I should have done a better job of dealing with that than I did why he missed shots the night before and I lost a game and couldn't sleep,
So give me a 5-second coach then. What's something you say to a team? What's an agenda you give to a team in 5 seconds?
Well, I think I'm referring more to in the heat of the moment when something happens, get backside, make sure you close out, got to play harder. We're not talking. I'm big on, even all of our plays were one syllable, just red, blue, green, just one syllable things, because I think that simplifies. And, we just talked about this, simplicity and clarity.
Yeah.
So honestly, though, there are some people that, enjoy being talked to more and are great listeners, whereas I think in this instance, and basketball is a different sport, it's a bang-bang sport. And so the quicker I can make my point, and the more consistent I am with some of those phrases or words, then the more it becomes our vocabulary. You would get handed a notebook that had those things in there, so you kind of already knew them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if they're hearing them over and over, as a coach, you're stealing them. So whether it was a John Wooden, be quick but don't hurry, just little things like that, just trying to get them etched in their minds.
So I love that, though, and that's what I was hoping you were kind of leaning into is the shorthand. Mm-hmm. Call the play. How does everybody understand? Because I assume at that moment you guys have run it so many times, there isn't a lack of clarity when somebody says this play.
For sure. I think the thing is, in that particular sport, what can you do once somebody takes away an option? If they take away this coming around, what's our next option? And you try to go over those, but at the end of the day, sometimes they just got to be instinctive and react in a way that you take what the defense gives you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think the preparation that you do and the constant reps that you do, I think that makes you more familiar with it when the game comes. But the second somebody does something else and adversity hits, a lot of that goes out the door. So it's probably more mental than it is physical at that point.
I want to chase a bunny trail, but do you have anything you want to ask about, Tyler?
Yeah, I was going to ask, as a guy who is a coach and a leader, do you have someone who coaches and listens to you?
I do. Yeah. So I have 3 forms right now. Every Saturday morning, I hop on a Zoom call with 3 guys. All who one is still in the athletic world. I'm not going to give him away, but one was actually, he'd have no problem. One was the football coach at the university when I was there. Called me right after COVID, said, "Hey, I know how much you love to learn and grow. We're going to hop on a Zoom call. You in?" "Yeah, I'm in." I'll go right now. So the 4 of us are on there, and there's a huge faith element to that. Yep. I mean, we'll get up there and kind of go over our week. We do a 1 up, 1 down. I read 2 devotionals every morning. Then we hop into a book. We read a book together. So we walk We go through life together, know everything and anything about each other.
Yeah.
The next is locally. I have 3 guys that I go to lunch with every 2 weeks. That's an accountability group. Once again, we know each other's stories. And so we're just, whatever it is, we're being held accountable to that. We talked about that earlier today. I think we all need it. Whether we want it or not, it's important. And then thirdly, I have a guy that pours into me one-on-one on a consistent basis. And I would also say I'm big on, I'm lucky. I mean, I'm just big on a ton of guys in my life that I just stay in touch with.
Yeah.
I was on the phone yesterday for an hour with Kyle Stark, who's assistant GM of Pirates, good friend, going to see him soon. Just so guys like that too. I'm just very intentional on probably having one of those conversations outside of those 3 realms. And I'm just a big connector. Like I just mentioned earlier too, locally, I like just to connect with people, just to see what they have going on and being open-minded to any and all things, whether they fit or don't fit.
Mm-hmm.
That's
awesome.
That was good. Yeah, I like that. Those you need, as you kind of said about the cup, to have those people pouring back into you.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is males. We struggle at times with vulnerability.
Yep.
When I was asked to be in the one group, I said I'm all in. I just don't want to be judged because I'm broken just like you are. So I just want to be in a group to where we can be vulnerable and open and talk about things. And be supported and once again be held accountable when I need it.
Yeah.
So I want to chase a bunny trail here real quick because I think you said something that for business owners, that is a little bit of a difference between the sports world and the business world. Mm-hmm. In the sports world, you get to practice. You get to practice with your team without the opposition. You get to run those plays until when somebody says this, that's exactly what it means. You get to practice in a non-combative, non-competition environment to make sure there's understanding, there's clarity, that everybody's on the same page, that the team can work together in an environment where they can trust each other, that it's not everything's on the line. So that when they show up to those places, you've already set that foundation. Mm-hmm. The business world, it feels like you're always in the game. You're always in the competition. Mm-hmm. And as you grow, maybe you started this in your garage and you grow the team and you end up with 150 employees, and this entire time you've been playing the game. You don't feel like there's any time to practice. You don't feel like there's any time when it's not on the line trying to win the game. How do you help a team that needs that shorthand, that needs to know that they can trust each other when it's communicating, that needs to be able to show up like they've been practicing all week for this game, like they've been reviewing tapes just for this game? Mm-hmm. How do you help a team that's always feels like it's in the competition feel like they have the same level of cohesiveness as if they've practiced all of this all the way along?
It's interesting. I want to say about a year or 2 after I started doing this, somebody asked me a great question. They said, Kevin, every day there's a scoreboard in your world. When you coach, there was a scoreboard at practice. We made everything competitive because that's how I'm wired. But in the game, there's wins and there's losses. Every day, how do I know if I'm winning in business? And I thought that was a great question. Like, I didn't have an answer. I don't even know if I still have one, but I would say this. I think each business needs to start there and define what does winning look like in your business. Because winning to you and winning to Berlin Gardens and winning to Provia might be totally different things, just based on the simple fact that you have a number of employees that are different across the table. And so then I think you just need to really double down on who you are. I think we really get sideways on our identity. I know I did as a coach. If you would have invited me here about 20 years ago, I don't know if my head would have fit in the room. So I think that's the other thing, is understanding who you are, not what you do. Who you are is this, what you do is this. That's really, really important. I see that as a massive problem in society in general, because we get so caught up in what we do, that, I'm a coach, that's who I am. No. This is just what I do. Like I try to tell my sons that, what you do is you hit that white ball. That's not who you are. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's a big thing, those 2 things to start. And then to me, after you've kind of defined that, after you understand the who and the what, I think you're just doubling down as a company in terms of your values and where you're going with that. And then what are the things that you're doing for your people that really take that off a wall and put it into play? maybe I'm a little biased because I do some of these things myself at Berlin Gardens, but a lot of this is Sam, right? Sam he's the best I've ever seen at pouring into people, and he just has a high level of intentionality to that. Like, you matter, okay? You know, you put your bikes here. You don't have a cup. Let's build a little garage for you. You don't have anything to pump it up. We'll get you a tire here. You stand over here in production all day. We'll get you the nicest mat to stand on. You know, whatever it is. And even now, like what we've really done, you guys know this, but it's like hitting the middle of the business. You know, leadership always talks about these things. Next level down, here's a little bit, but as you trickle down, people lose that. You know, so where can we hit that and get all of this out there? Does that make sense how I'm explaining that? And so, you know, the thing I'm going to now, I'm going to be with 20 supervisors, and we're going to be together an hour. You know, they're at 4 tables of 5. I'm going to give them a topic, and then they got 30 minutes to engage in great conversation. And then it's big Post-it note takeaways. Come up, put it on the wall, and let's talk about it. And let's have a really good discussion. You know, I might throw back a question or a challenge, whatever it is. But things like that as you're going, like, if nothing else gets done today with that group in that hour, they've won the day. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that come out of that, you know, and you know as well as I do, to try to get an Amish guy to speak in front of others, just that alone is a massive victory for them, right. Let alone the discussion that we're having. And so, you know, and tomorrow with 35 plus book study, you know, from all different entities of the business, same kind of conversation, engaged at a topic, you know, taking time away from the work day to engage with that connection, you know, that education, you know, and then finding out some things that maybe we never even thought about as a business that in 3, 6, 12 months will change down the road just because of that time being spent. So I think when you're doing, I hope those are good enough examples, because that to me is like the practice. And out of anything, and like I wouldn't go back and coach tomorrow probably, but I miss the practice. I miss the time with the guys. I miss the time with the staff. I miss the time where nobody else is around. You know, you could just disconnect for 2 hours of your day, put that phone away and be present, and know that, I think this is another thing, Chris, that's really important. Sorry to ramble. We get so caught up in the destination. The biggest thing I miss about sports is the journey. You know where you're going, but it's the journey to get there. That's where these relationships are formed. And it's not always pretty, man. It's not always rainbow. There's times where I stand in front of the locker room, we're on a 4-game losing streak, and there's not one person there believes in me. You know, and you got to turn that around. Right. But that's just all part of the journey. You know what I mean? You don't get too high, you don't get too low. You just keep going. You just keep showing up, and then you just try to be consistent in the things that you're doing. So I hope I give you a couple of things there.
Yeah, that was really good. Actually, and I think sometimes business owners put too much pressure on every day. And, you know, where in a practice, somebody makes a move and all of a sudden you're like, hey, that's not the right direction to go on that play. Start again. You get to blow the whistle. You can start that play again, help them make that move. Every time when business owners are putting so much pressure on every day for that stuff to step right, when it steps wrong, you don't feel like you can call it back. Say start again.
Well, but I would also say, what type of culture environment are you creating to the level of mistakes that can be made? Because we talk there all the time. This is another plug for Sam. Best ever. There's delegation and there's empowerment. And I think you need both depending on, you know, if I hire you tomorrow, I'm not empowering you yet. Maybe because there's not that care or trust that we talked about earlier built. When I empower you, number one, God forbid your idea might be better than mine. And number two, I'm allowing you to screw up, you know, and now there's a level, you know, that I'm allowing you to screw up. If it's a $25,000 mistake or it's multiple mistakes over and over again, and finance is the easy example maybe to give, or what's coming to my mind, that's one thing. You know, those are different conversations. But I think when I've empowered you, you can come up with your own idea. You can make mistakes. You can do all these things. I think your level of trust and buy-in to the company just goes to another level.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, where can people find you? I mean, that's one of the things we always like to point to.
Like my home address?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. No, but if people want to follow up on this and they have any questions or they want to, you know, get any coaching with you, I know you're doing a limited amount right now, but if they want to know more, where can they find you?
Yeah, it's funny. Somebody asked me yesterday. I don't have a hard time saying no. I have a hard time saying no if I can help make impact, and I'm about at max level right now. But I'm on all the the social media platforms. You could find me on those. Good Stuff or just my personal pages. I'll try to do a good job of staying in touch and connecting, but email is always good. goodstuffkevin@gmail.com. They can find me that way. But no, yeah, I don't, if somebody were to come to me tomorrow and say, hey, can we get coffee? It's really rare that I say no. It might be not yet. It might be 2 months down the road. It might be 4 months down the road, but it might be 2 days depending on the schedule. But I do. I love connecting with people. I just feel that's just part of what I've been called to do. And in this area, just continually trying to have great conversations, to challenge and be open-minded and think of other things that can work for others. So, yeah.
And where do they go to get registered for May 3rd for the Good Stuff Conference?
Yeah, so right now, if this as well as I do, Chris, our community is off the charts. I mean, and sometimes we probably take it for granted, but we can't do the events we do without the support of the people. And every year, this is just something that ultimately is supporting the event and some of the podcast. I mean, this isn't for me. So sponsorships, we're taking some of those still right now. Luckily, we have, Dutchman and Berlin Gardens comes through big for us, and then some others in the area. So that's reaching out to me more personal. I handle all that on my own just to develop those relationships. And then the ticket link will be up soon at Dutchman Hospitality, their website.
Okay.
And then any of that you can find. I mean, social media, she's pushing all that out for me on a pretty consistent basis, a couple times a week. But,
awesome.
Yeah, if you see me locally, that's just track me down. Or I don't want to give my cell phone out, but texting is actually, my cell is 330-418-0313. I don't know why I said that, but
that's a brave man right there. Should we beep that out?
No, you can do it. I mean, it's funny, like if they call me, I probably won't pick up because I don't know the number, but if you shoot me a text, there's a better chance. I'm better at texting than I am email.
They can find it anyways, let's be honest.
It's a quick story real quick. I was listening to a podcast. John Gordon, I think, had Howard Behar on from Starbucks, not Howard Schultz, but then Howard Behar was the president. And I'm mowing one day, it's like late October, and at the end, they're like, how can you find me? And he gives out his cell phone. And I stopped the mower. I'm like, did I hear that right? Yeah. And I went back in. I told my wife, I didn't know some things about Starbucks. It was a great podcast. And then I said, this guy gave his number out. She says, you're going to call Archie? I said, yes, I am. Called him and eventually had him on the pod. So
no way.
Goes back to earlier. Like if I ask, the worst they can do is say no. And
isn't that wild? It's just, you never know sometimes.
That's awesome.
Yeah. People are people.
Back in my band days, I know we're trying to cut off the podcast, but I did a similar thing with a guy who was running a record label that I dreamed of being on as a teenager, and his email was his first name at the record, the name of the record label.com. And I ended up connecting with him, but they forwarded his email to me. I was like, hey, here's his email if you want to talk to him. I was like, I mean, I could have guessed that.
Yeah, right.
I could have just typed in his first name and put at.
I think we create a lot of things in our own mind, and we build these things up and we get scared and those fears went out. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to know unless I call.
Yep.
So
that's some good advice right there at the very end anyway. Well, dude, thank you so much, Kevin. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time this morning. Folks who are listening right now, this will be coming out about the same time that we post Kevin's Mastermind Talk. So go hear that one first. And then this one will kind of dovetail really, really well with what we talked about this morning. Look for May 3rd for the conference, and follow up with Kevin if you have any questions. So on behalf of myself, Tyler, and Kevin, this is Chris White, and you've been listening to Basic Business Advice.